What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in this season's Championship Series Cup with a Pokemon that should not even be eligible, but is actually really the only hard counter to Spidops in the meta, where it is the #1 ranked Pokemon according to PvPoke at least, and this illegal Pokemon that I'm talking about is Sunny Castform. Now the allowed typings for this meta include Bug, Dark, Dragon, and Normal, with various individual bans, as well as allowing Politoed, Frostlass, Milotic, and Seaking. So a pure Fire type absolutely should not be allowed in this meta, but what I think has happened is that normal Castform is eligible, so apparently all the Castform weather variants are also available, at least at the time of recording this. Potentially it might get fixed, maybe not. Shadows were supposed to be banned the last time we had the Championship Series Cup, and they were actually never removed for GBL, so I wouldn't count on this Pokemon being removed. But anyways, the reason this is so important is because if you give Spidops a 1 shield advantage in this meta, it beats literally every single Pokemon in the meta. You can check this yourself on PvPoke. However, it does not beat Sunny Castform, so this is the only Pokemon that can beat Spidops down a shield, and it shouldn't even be allowed. Anyways, I actually only saw 2 Spidops in 18 battles, so it wasn't really that relevant, but I won 16 of those 18 battles, nearly a 90% win rate with this team, so it's still a really strong Pokemon. For the rest of the team, I've got Hisuian Samurott as my safe swap, and Crocodile as my closer, both of which have been buffed this season. With that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What are your initial impressions of this season's Championship Series Cup? I feel like last season overall it was pretty positive, although obviously towards the end it did get very boring. However, this time around I feel like this is already a pretty boring meta, and I cannot see this being enjoyable for 2 weeks in a row. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Castform into Furret. So this is a fairly neutral matchup here. Of course, we're going to have stab damage with our fast move and our charge moves, whereas, of course, they can only go for Swift for stab damage. Sucker Punch, still a great move. They actually go for Brick Break, which is quite surprising, but I'm actually just going to swap now into my Samurott, and the opponent comes in with Obstagoon. Of course, they're going to be on counter. However, Sacred Sword is going to hit for double super effective damage, and Fury Cutters are also chunking, so I'm going to shield here. I feel like I might be able to reach 2 more Sacred Swords before they can fully farm me down. So the opponent is actually just going to no-shield the second one before coming in with a Spidops, getting the Bug Bite farm down, but that's absolutely okay for me. We can come in with the Castform, Weather Ball going to hit for super effective damage. It doesn't deal that much damage, but that's okay. We can come in with the Crocodile, the opponent going to go for a Brick Break, which of course is super effective. However, of course, I am resisting the fast move pressure. We can go for a Brick Break of our own. Brick Break would get the KO from that range, so the opponent used their final shield, and that is a huge mistake, because now, of course, they can boost up their attack stat. I don't really care about that. I'm going to farm up to back-to-back Weather Balls. First one, going to be getting the KO up against the Furret, and I do over-farm here, although I didn't realize, actually, Spidops is already fairly low. Weather Ball, going to be easily enough to get the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Castform into Shadow Drapion. Now, I had a bit of a run where I saw like 3 or 4 of these things in a row. We're going to swap out. I tried to catch an Aquatail, doesn't work out for me. However, my safe swap of Samurott throws my opponent completely off guard as they swap into a Pokemon that has, first of all, double resisted fast move pressure, but is also taking double super effective fast move pressure in Fury Cutter. I'm able to grab both shields. They farmed up to back-to-back superpowers, I believe, so I'm actually just happy to let it go through there. Superpower does get the KO, but now we can come in with the Castform. I'm going to no-shield this, and then I will commit to a full farm down. They're actually going to swap out into Dragonair, but all shields are down, so I'm going to shield the first charge move. The opponent is going to go ahead and actually wrap bait me there, which costs more energy than an Aquatail. Of course, yes, it does debuff my attack stat, or sorry, my defense stat, but either way, Crunch gets the KO. The opponent is waiting to come back in. They come in with the Shadow Drapion, and I realize I'm not going to get to a charge move, but I just need the Mud Slap damage. That's all that's important. So we put them into range where hopefully a Weather Ball will get the KO. Now the opponent does have the opportunity to make a catch. However, I farmed up to back-to-back Weather Balls, so it really doesn't matter at all, as we can fire off the second one, and if this doesn't quite get the KO, then it will put them into range where a single Ember gets the farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see a Vigoroth in the lead. Now, I do assume they're going to be on Rock Side for coverage here, but I don't know what their second charge move is, so I'm going to farm up. I'm going to throw just before they get to the Rock Side. Weather Ball coming through. Weather Ball does decent damage there. A second Weather Ball will get the KO. a shield, and they do full send the rock side. They swap though, they swap into a Dragapult. That is a very spicy pick, but also a little bit awkward for me because we are, of course, going to take neutral damage from the dragon typing. They can just barely outpace me as I was quite slow to swap out there, but now we can just go straight for a Crunch. Crunch, gonna get the KO. I am debuffed, but they come back in with the Vigor off, and I can now fire off a Brick Break. Brick Break debuff, but it will also debuff the defense there, and it ends up grabbing a shield. I'm now going to come in with the Samurott, expecting a Body Slam here, but the opponent is actually going to be on Brick Break and Rock Side. However, we're going to bank some energy, swap out into Cast Form, get a full farm down, and their final Pokemon is Malamar. However, this time, they're on Psycho Cut rather than Psywave, which means they are not going to be able to fast move farm me down at all. We're going to get to 3 Weather Balls here. Weather Ball number 3, we'll put them into range where I can definitely just Fury Cut to farm them down. The opponent needs to overfarm in this matchup, and they don't do that at all. Either way, it shouldn't really matter as we're close to a Sacred Sword, but we can Fury Cutter, farm them down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle. Going to see Shadow Drapion in the lead once again. So, we are going to stay in. Once again, going to try and make a catch. And this time, even though they didn't throw straight away, they do end up throwing an Arctotail anyways, which is fine with me. They now swap into Shadow Dragonair. And unfortunately, that might have been a smart play on their end because they put me into range where I have to respect the damage from a Body Slam, meaning I am going to use a shield. As now, we can go for Icy Wind. Icy Wind going to connect. It does big damage. It allows me to farm them down. And now they come back in with the Shadow Drapion. I'm going for Sacred Sword. I recognize they might be able to fully fast move farm me down here and come out with tons of energy, so I'm actually going to swap out straight away into Crocodile. Arctotail is super effective, but of course it is non-stab, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Sableye. So of course I can go for Crunch. Crunch, gonna hit for neutral damage, the opponent committing to the farm down, but Crocodile is the one that gets the farm down. Unfortunate for the opponent, that looks so unlikely that Crocodile would hang on there, but we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, another Drapion, so we're going to swap out straight away this time around. We've tried to make some catches. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't, but they come in with a Licky Licky, and this is a great matchup, especially since I'm so far ahead on energy. We can go for a second Sacred Sword here before they even reach a potential Body Slam, and the opponent, in over-farming, allows me to reach yet another Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword going to grab both shields from the opponent. They have farmed up so much energy, but I'm happy with that 2-shot advantage. They full sent a Hyper Beam, so respect for that. However, we can just come in with the Cast Form. I'm not messing around here. I don't know what their second charge move is, so we just fire off the Weather Ball straight away. And now I'm actually going to stay in because we are quite a lot bulkier on the Cast Form compared to the Crocodile. So Arctotail is super effective, but it doesn't deal that much damage. And their final Pokemon is going to be Incineroar, meaning we can go for Brick Break. Brick Break will get the KO, and of course, we've still got both our shields in play. The opponent has no play whatsoever, and so they just concede the match. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Cast Form into Dubwool. So this is going to be a neutral matchup here. Of course, my backline is going to be weak to the fighting typing. However, double kicks, they're non-stab. They're not really going to deal that much damage over time. But either way, I am going to choose to stay in this matchup initially. We're going to fire off the Weather Ball. Weather Ball is going to deal decent damage there. And the Embers are eventually putting them into the yellow health range. Now, I can outpace them to a third Weather Ball, but the opponent actually swaps out and catches onto Dunsparce. This is actually fine with me because this is going to put them into range where a Brick Break should hopefully get the KO. So I'm now going to no-shield this. Joron not going to deal too much damage here. Of course, rollouts are also going to be resisted. I'm going to farm up, throw the Brick Break on the CMP tie, winning CMP with the Crocodile, and the opponent actually uses their shield. So that's fine with me. I'm hoping I put them into Mud Slap farm down range. They fire off the drill run, but they actually swap out of that matchup and into Ariados. We can go straight for Crunch here. I am resisting the fast food pressure. Crunch does decent damage, and it is going to force them to throw pretty much straight away. The opponent goes for lunge there, absolutely fine with me. Cast Form is fairly low, so I don't think I can Ember farm them down. So I'm going to come in with the Samurott, make the catch there as the opponent goes for a second lunge, and now we put them into Fury Cutter farm down range. The opponent does just barely swap out in time before being fully farmed down, but the damage is done. We've got back-to-back Sacred Swords. First one grabs the final shield. Sacred Sword number 2 gets the KO there. They can come back in with the Dunsparce, but we can outpace to yet another Sacred Sword. Samurott is just so spammy this season, and of course, one more Fury Cutter takes out the Ariados, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent is the next battle, another Shadow Drapion in the lead. So these battles are slightly out of order, but I believe that is going to be all of the Shadow Drapions that I did see. Either way, we are not seeing the best matchup for us as we're met with a Shadow Galvantula. However, we do grab a shield and Fury Cutter damage, which is non-stat by the way on the Hisuian Samurott, gets them into the yellow health range. Of course, they are also debuffed now. I can no-shield this, and the opponent actually goes for a debuff of their own. I don't know if that means they don't have discharge here. Either way, I'm not going to mess around. I'm actually able to outpace them because they full sent the lunge there. And now I swap out straight away, and their final Pokemon is going to be Shadow Malamar. This game should be absolutely wrapped up here. All I need to do is double shield. The opponent likely baits, and they do bait with a foul play. Now, if I go for a break here and they no-shield this, that could be the lose condition for me. But now I might as well just shield this. Surely this time they go for the superpower. They do. Now I can commit to a full farm down, but just in case their switch clock came up, I actually swap out there. I bank the energy, knowing that Cast Form can tank an Aqua Tail. However, if they came in and sniped with their Drapion against my Crocodile, that could have been catastrophic. So now, Weather Ball doesn't get the KO. They can get the full farm down, but we do have the energy. We can go straight for Brick Break. We don't need to hit any bubbles here, as they're on 1 HP and a Dream. We're able to take out the Shadow Drapion, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle. We're going to see Shadow Sableye in the lead. So, this is going to be a neutral matchup. They could be on Power Gem, in which case I'm going to stay in initially, go for a Weather Ball. Actually, you know what? I'm going to swap out straight away here, and the opponent doesn't farm up to anything other than a potential foul play. So, that is resisted damage. Not really sure about that play, but I guess another scenario where they kind of just need to chip with whatever they can because they come in with a Furret, which also isn't a great response. Whereas, of course, chipping with the foul play there means I have to shield a Swift. Now at this point, I'm going to look to overfarm. I shielded there just because I realized Crocodile couldn't quite come in and farm them down before they get to the next move. So I might as well shield this because if they come back in with the Sableye, we can still reach yet another Sacred Sword. So Sacred Sword coming through is going to get the KO, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Kingdra, and that is looking really dicey for my Shadow Cast Form. I'm going to shield this. This should just be a Swift. It is the Swift there, but what I don't really want to do is put myself into farm down range. I'd much rather shield the first charge move and then force them to throw again. Now, I'm really hoping I do live the Swift here. Swift doesn't get the KO, so that Mud Slap registers, and that means I should be able to get the KO with a Weather Ball. However, they do have a slight energy advantage. I'm going to need to make a catch, and you can see I tried to swap out, but I was one turn too late. Outrage gets the KO there, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Charge Bug in the lead, so a great lead matchup for me. We're just going to choose to stay in here, of course, and the opponent also choosing to stay in. This is fine. We can go for a Weather Ball. Weather Ball is going to deal super effective damage. However, it doesn't really put them into Ember farm down range, so I think what I'm going to do now, they go for a Discharge. I'm going to overfarm, and then I'm actually going to swap into my Crocodile, expecting to catch a resisted Discharge. Now, of course, there are no flying types in this meta, so Crocodile safe swap, or like as a catch swap there, kind of goes unpunished, and you can see they come in with a water type, but they've got rollout as the fast move, meaning I can actually just shield here. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't have a clue who wins CMP, so I'm not going to risk it. Instead, I'm just going to do the cheesy Mud Slap play, double shield, go for a full Mud Slap farm down, and we're going to come out with so much energy. Let's see what the opponent wants to do. They come in with Greninja, but they try to swap and make a catch there. But unfortunately for them, we just go for the extra Mud Slap anyways. We can go for back-to-back Brick Breaks. The first one actually ends up being shielded, meaning the second one going to deal huge damage, and we can Fury Cutter Snipe with Hisuian Samurott, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle. We're going to see another Spidops. So, this is great where we want to see it. However, they swap into double, and I don't really have a direct response to this safe swap, as of course, both my Pokemon, as I've already mentioned in the back, are going to be weak to the fighting typing. So, we chip there, and then, of course, they can't full send a nuke because both Wild Charge and Payback are resisted. So, they have to just settle for the Body Slams here, but they actually overfarm. So, I get to a Brick Break. Brick Break gets the KO, and the opponent's probably now going to come back in with the Spidops, but that's okay. We are fairly low, so they're not going to get a huge farm down. Sunny Cast Form will still easily outpace them to the next charge move. I do overfarm ever so slightly just in case they try to make a catch there, but Weather Ball going to be shielded. And now, of course, they are going to throw likely a Rock Tomb. They might actually bait with a lunge. I wouldn't mind if I was the opponent there and going for a lunge there because we're expecting to grab a shield anyways. But either way, we farm up to back-to-back Weather Balls. They're actually going to double shield the Spidops, but we still reach another Weather Ball. So Weather Ball doesn't get the KO because we're debuffed. I don't know what they've got in the back here, but they're kind of making it clear that they don't want to see Cast Form, but that was a mistake because they've actually got Kingdra, one of the hardest answers to Cast Form in the entire meta there, so I don't really know why they played that out like they did. However, we go for Icy Wind. This is going to force them to full send the Outrage, which does get the KO, but now we can come in with the Cast Form. We only have double resisted fast move pressure, double resisted weather balls. Of course, we're not reaching a solar beam, but this is just going to be a Swift. Swift does not get the KO. They come back in with the Spidops trying to catch a charge move, but we can actually just Ember farm down both the Spidops and the Kingdra to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, we're going to see Double in the lead. So, once again, this is a fine matchup for us, slightly better for us in the lead than in the back. We're going to go for Weather Ball, and you can see 2 Weather Balls with the Ember damage. Won't quite put them into farm down range for me to Ember farm them down before they get to a 3rd body slam here. So at this point, I'm going to no shield this. I'm going to fire off another Weather Ball after 1 more Ember, and then hopefully that's going to put them into range where I can just Mud Slap snipe them with my Crocodile. So Weather Ball going to connect, and yes, that is going to be Mud Slap farm down range, and the opponent not able to react in time. So now they come in with Kingdra. I realize they get to Swift on CMP, so I assume they're going to throw straight away, meaning I go for the extra Mud Slap, which means now I can very comfortably outpace the back-to-back charge moves. First one, going to grab a shield there with the Brick Break. We can now go for Brick Break number 2, and because they're debuffed, Brick Break will get the KO here, and their final Pokemon going to be Dunsparce, and the opponent already recognizing it's going to be pretty tough for them to win that game, so they just concede the match. So, GG's to there, into the next battle, we're going to see Miltank in the lead. So, again, bit of a neutral matchup here, of course. They are going to have super effective rollouts, however, as the fast food, but that's okay with me. We can go for Weather Ball, and Weather Ball is going to deal slightly less damage here, as opposed to up against the Double. So, the opponent goes for Body Slam. I'm actually now going to swap out here, and the opponent is just going to fire off another Body Slam. Now, I don't want to swap out straight away, just because Miltank could be on Thunderbolt for coverage, which would hit for super effective damage up against the Samurott, or they could have Ice Beam, which would be super effective into Crocodile. Either way, they come in with Obstagoon, and they try to commit to a full counter farm down, but we get to back-to-back Sacred Swords, grabbing both shields in the process, and now we can come in with our Sunny Cast Form. I'm going straight for Weather Ball here. Weather Ball is going to hit for neutral damage. I think I can tank a Night Slash fairly comfortably, and honestly, we are so spammy, the opponent not going to be able to fully farm me down, so they swap out into Miltank, make the catch there, which is a nice play. However, now we can come in with the Crocodile, and the opponent committing to a potential Ice Beam, most likely, but they get fully farmed down, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Frostlass. So we overfarm here, Crunch gets the KO, they come back in with the Obstagoon, and we are able to reach a Brick Break before they counter farm me all the way down. Brick Break takes out the Obstagoon, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, I see Shadow Dragonair in the lead. So, Dragonair is probably the most problematic Pokemon for this team, just because, of course, I have 2 Pokemon that are weak to the water typing. Cast Form is completely walled by the Dragonair. And yeah, Crocodile also going to struggle because it does get quite considerably outpaced. But we swap out there. Maybe I should have shielded just to debuff them once again, because now we're still going to take super effective damage. So far, both Pokemon have super effective water damage against my team, which is going to be weak to water. So not ideal for me, but we go for Weather Ball. Still not going to get the KO. I think actually I'm just going to stay in, force them to throw some energy here. Now we can come in with the Crocodile, and they will still very easily outpace me to the next charge move. But I should now be able to reach a Brick Break before they get to a 3rd Aqua Tail. So we throw straight away. I'm hoping this does get the KO from this range. It's going to be close, but it does get the KO. However, they're going to have a 3rd Pokemon that has water type charge through pressure in the form of Aqua Tail. Kind of have to shield here. However, now the opponent can come back in. We're not able to Mud Slap farm down the Galissapod, meaning they reach another Aqua Jet. Aqua Jet gets the KO, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's up on there, into the next battle, we're going to see Mightyena in the lead. So we've actually got 2 Dark-type Pokemon. I assumed they'd be on Sucker Punch. That could have been quite risky if they were on Thunderfang there. But either way, we swap out, and we're going to see a Sea King coming in. So that's fine that they caught that, as now we can overfarm, fire off another Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword probably doesn't quite KO from this range, but the opponent realizes if they no-shield that, we can just shield once and farm them down. So now, a bit of an awkward situation here, just because I can't quite Mud Slap farm them down here. So I'm going to come in with the Crew Crocodile, but I assume they're going to go straight for an Icy Wind, so I actually swap into Cast Form, catching a resisted charge move. Now yes, that does debuff me. They come back in with the Shadow Mightyena, but we're fairly bulky, and they do just go straight for Poison Fang, meaning we can go for a Weather Ball here. Weather Ball is, of course, debuffed now because of the Icy Wind from the Sea King. However, we get to a second Weather Ball before they farm me down. They no shield. Their final Pokemon gonna be Shadow Malamar. I'm watching out for a potential catch here. The opponent tries to make the catch, but we actually get to back-to-back crunches now, so I'm just gonna full send. No point baiting. Crunch gets the KO up against the Shadow Malamar, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We can see Dragonair in the lead once again. So once again, going to be safe swapping into my Samurott, and the opponent going to allow me to reach an Icy Wind before swapping out or before throwing their own charge move, and it also connects, which is huge for me. Now, they've overfarmed a lot. This is going to be a Dragon Pulse, which, because we debuff them, doesn't quite get the KO, but the opponent then swaps out of that matchup, and that is fine with me. We can now come in straight away with the Crocodile. Going to go for the Brick Break. Brick Break is going to hit for super effective damage, and you know what? I'm actually going to shield this first charge move, because if they connect with a last resort, potentially they can just start settling for foul plays, whereas if I shield the first one, they still have to full send another last resort. And at this point, Brick Break is going to double debuff them. The opponent is going to fire off a second last resort. They swap back into Dragonair just to be fully farmed down, but they're likely going to come back in with the Umbreon. Now, I don't know what they've got in the back, so I'm actually going to preserve the HP and some energy on my Crocodile, instead catching a foul play onto Cast Form, and unless they've got a second Dragon-type Pokemon, Cast Form's energy is going to be pretty useful, or if they have like a Fire-type Pokemon, for example. But we commit to the farm down, we get a huge farm down, and that works out perfectly for me, as they've got Ariados in the back, a very spammy Pokemon, but unfortunately for them, we've already got 3 Weather Balls loaded. First one is going to connect, second one grabs the final shield, and we can go straight for the third one here. Weather Ball, super effective. It takes out the Ariados, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We can see Politoed in the lead. So, of course, not a great matchup for me. We swap into Samurott, and the opponent comes in with Obstagoon. But wait, they are on Lick. What on earth is this? Lick, usually not the preferred moveset anyways, and especially not in this meta, where there are so many Pokemon that have the normal typing that would take super effective damage from counters. So, I don't really understand Lick Obstagoon at all. Either way, not going to complain, however, because that puts us in a great position. And now I'm actually going to swap out there, because I realize Samurott is fairly good into their entire team. So we're now going to catch a payback. They come back in with the Politoed, and I'm just going to no shield this. Unless we are able to reach a Solar Beam, we have no play really into the Politoed, so might as well just no shield. Now we can come in with the Crocodile, of course, going to take super effective damage from these Weather Balls, and they are very spammy. But we can go straight for a Brick Break. If they no shield this, they are in danger of being fully Mud Slap farmed down, so they do end up shielding there. But now we're going to swap out, make a catch onto Samurott, and Weather Ball, despite being resisted, gets the KO. We're going to come back in with the Crocodile and waiting for a potential catch. The opponent goes for it, so we're just going to hold on to the energy at this point. We can shield the Wild Charge there. Don't really know why they went for Wild Charge either. I guess they had double nukes there, but either way, we can now go for the Crunch. Crunch gets the KO up against the Politoed, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We see Miltank in the lead. So, we've seen this already. 2 Weather Balls. Not going to put them into farm down range, unfortunately. This time I do overfarm quite a bit more. We're going to go for the Weather Ball anyways. No point going for a Solar Beam, as that won't one-shot them anyways. And now we go for a second Weather Ball. So, the opponent still hasn't thrown yet. They are overfarming a lot, so I would like to catch a charge move here, but it is quite risky, because if I do try and swap out now, they're actually going to have energy for a Thunderbolt or an Ice Beam, so quite risky. We are now going to swap out into my Samurott, and the opponent is going to just barely outpace me there. I'm going to shield this, respecting just in case it is one of the nuke charge moves, but it is just a Body Slam, meaning this is going to be another Body Slam. That's fine. I can no shield this, and I can commit to a full Fury Cutter farm down. The opponent is going to come in with a second normal type. This time it's going to be double. That's fine with me. We can go for Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword does just under half their HP, but the Fury Cutters have already put them into range for a second Sacred Sword. Gets the KO, and we're able to reach yet another Sacred Sword here. This should be grabbing the final shield, and it does exactly that. So now we're going to swap into Crocodile, but their final Pokemon going to be a third normal type Pokemon in the form of Dunsparce. We can go for Brick Break. Brick Break is going to put them into range where I can just Mud Slap farm them down, and also I don't need to shield the first charge move. It looks like I won't quite be able to farm them down before they get to the next move, but that is kind of irrelevant. We've got another Brick Break loaded. We can win CMP up against the double here, so we just throw straight away. Brick Break, super effective. It gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the final battle of this video. I did actually include every single battle I did with this team for once. Usually I don't do that just because I usually do more than 18 battles. But basically, I was just trying to find a team that worked. I did a couple battles, I then used this team, and then I'm just going to bank a set for tomorrow. But either way, we are going to go for a weather ball here, and the opponent went straight for a power-up punch, which is fine with me. It means I can just very comfortably no-shield that. We can go for a second weather ball, and if they commit to a farm down, Sunny Castform has other ideas. We reach a third weather ball. Weather ball doesn't quite get the KO there. Now, just in case they do full send a player off, I'm going to shield. I expect a foul play. It is the foul play there, so I guess I didn't need to shield that. However, they were boosted anyway, so it's not the worst thing ever. Either way, I'm going to go for Brick Break. Brick Break, going to hit for super effective. I tried to catch a triple axle there. It doesn't work out, but the opponent committing to a Hyper Beam gets outpaced. Sacred Sword gets the KO, and again, it's going to be another double normal backline. So we can go for Sacred Sword here, and we throw on good timing, meaning we will reach a second Sacred Sword as they get to the second body slam, and we will win CMP very comfortably in this matchup. So I use my shield. We get to Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword, super effective up against the double. It gets to KO, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.